I'm gonna talk about something that I've kind of had on my mind for a while. My wife actually put me on this one. She's kind of she actually has a master's of public health, and she's very interested in nutrition. Has a lot of more knowledge than I have about nutrition. People always assume that physicians know a lot about nutrition, but that's not always the case. I'm an emergency doctor, so you know, again, going back to one of my previous videos about what makes a great doctor, academic curiosity is one of them. And traditionally, I have not had a lot of academic curiosity about nutrition. I mean, I eat pretty healthy. Um, I don't eat a lot of junk food. I do eat ice cream every day. I eat ice cream every day. But other than that, it's pretty much fruits, veggies, meats, pretty healthy stuff. And I just drink water for the most part, nothing else other than coffee. But the point is that my wife put me on about how we have a lot of additives that are allowed in foods here in the United States that's not allowed in many other countries. Specifically, and most commonly, we kind of compare ourselves to the European Union as it relates to this issue. Now, California, on the other hand, kind of separates themselves from the rest of the United States in a way because they have some restrictions on a lot of additives that are not necessary and ones that are known carcinogens and known to be harmful to humans that are just generally allowed by the FDA and the USDA here in the United States. I'm sure there are a lot of forces behind the scenes, things that we don't know about, that are working the lobbyists and or have lobbyists that are working for them and things of that nature that allow this to happen. But more and more, I think we're seeing people become aware of this. And you know what it reminds me of? Tobacco. I think this is the next tobacco. When I was a kid, I remember we would go to restaurants and most restaurants didn't even have a no smoking section. You would sit down and somebody would be smoking right next to you and it just ruined the whole meal. I tell my kids about that. They're in disbelief. They can't believe that, but I mean, that's the way it was. And we go to school, get a little film about tobacco and how it's bad for you. It was very superficial. I remember coming home talking to my granddad about it because he smoked a pipe, and I'm gonna try to get him to quit smoking. He did die of lung cancer, but he was old. But this very much reminds me of that. And what do I mean by that? The processed food industry, and let me just back up here. And I'm going to say this. I am of the generation where the processed food industry was in its heyday. It was in its uprising. So I grew up on processed food. I was a latchkey kid. We poured our own cereal, processed food cereal, sugar-laced cereal in the morning, came home, unlocked the door ourselves, made ourselves a snack with little Debbie snacks and things of that nature. So this definitely hits home and something that our parents just weren't aware of. I wasn't aware of until within the last maybe 10 to 15 years or so. But just putting that out there before we get started. And okay. Let's back up once again just to put everything in context. I work with nurses and techs that are still working today that tell me stories about when doctors used to round on patients inside the hospital while they were smoking cigarettes.
If you were to follow a busy doctor as he makes his daily round of calls, you'd find yourself having a mighty busy time keeping up with him. Time out for many men of medicine usually means just long enough to enjoy a cigarette. And because they know what a pleasure it is to smoke a mild, good-tasting cigarette, they're particular about the brand they choose. In a repeated national survey, doctors in all branches of medicine, doctors in all parts of the country were asked, "What cigarette do you smoke, doctor?" Once again, the brand named most was Camel. Yes, according to this repeated nationwide survey, more doctors smoke Camels than any other cigarette. Why not change to Camels for the next 30 days and see what a difference it makes in your smoking enjoyment? See how Camels agree with your throat. See how mild and good tasting a cigarette can be.
I mean, that's unimaginable now. But, I mean, in parallel to this processed food thing that we're going to get further into in a minute, but it's like as more and more knowledge came out about tobacco and about cigarette smoking, it seemed to start at the kind of the upper echelon of academia, the more educated, wealthy, well-to-do, where you started seeing it, places you could go and there was no smoking allowed. You saw less and less smoking if you were in kind of the Tony neighborhoods when I was growing up and as I was in college or high school. And, it started to trickle down to the middle classes. And then, boom, they were called to Washington. And, I mean, heads were rolling and the industry was completely disrupted. And people in general are just a lot healthier because of it. Not that people don't still smoke. It's just the numbers of smoking is going down dramatically. And, the numbers of health effects that we're going to see down the line from that, from lung cancer to bladder cancer, to emphysema, to chronic bronchitis, as the older generation, makes way to this, our generation as we get elderly, it's going to be, kind of a lot more rare. And that's a good thing. But again, getting back to this parallel about processed food and tobacco, it's very similar. I mean, the very first thing you started seeing with processed food, starting with, the more highly educated, wealthy crowd, right? Because you go to a Tony neighborhood in almost any city, almost every restaurant is farm to table, fresh foods, organic. You see Whole Foods on there, on every major block. There's a farmer's market type restaurant, grocery store rather. There's fresh food restaurants, and that thing tends to kind of start. That's how trends start. That's how these things kind of start. It's like electric cars. You're seeing them, the Teslas, they're riding around in the Tony neighborhoods. 10 years from now, it's like the iPhone, you'll be seeing electric cars everywhere. That's how things go. As more and more information becomes more available, things become more accessible. Processed food industry has to be on the lookout for this. I'm sure they're aware of it. Yeah. Okay, so just to get to some specifics here. I don't know if you're aware of this, but there are literally hundreds of food additives. Even more if you go into like cosmetics and things, but let's just talk about food alone. Food additives that are banned, illegal in multiple countries across the world, specifically in the European Union, that are allowed in our foods here in the United States. And they are known to be either a carcinogen or harmful to humans to ingest. Oh, God. You gotta laugh so you don't cry. Okay, all right. Some specific examples. Potassium bromate and ADA, which is short for azodicarbonide. These are banned in Europe because they cause cancer. Get this. It is used to make flour white and more marketable. Not because it makes flour easier to bake. Not because it makes flour. It just whitens it. That's it. It's just necessary for our flour to be white. So, I mean, If you get cancer later, you had that white flour. Another one, BHA and BHT. These are preservatives. They're also called flavor enhancers. I mean, essentially what they do is they're added to a lot of different like shelf foods in order to keep them preserved, like in a warehouse, on a grocery shelf, so that they won't spoil. This is just a big processed food industry type thing, so they can keep their balance sheet healthy while we get cancer. This is a known carcinogen, a flavor enhancer, shelf preserver. Okay, the next one is something called brominated vegetable oil, or BVO. It's added into like sports drinks to give a citrus flavor instead of just adding citrus. Like Mountain Dew has it, for example. And it can cause inflammation, memory loss, affect your skin, causing inflammation of the skin, nerve damage, neuropathy. It's banned in Europe, but the FDA says it's safe. So, yeah. Okay, this I'm gonna have to read to you here about this BVO, the brominated vegetable oil. This is what the Mayo Clinic says on their website about it. Bromine can irritate the skin and mucous membranes. Mucous membranes are like inside of your mouth, like your urethra, like where you pee, things like that. Long-term exposure can cause neurologic symptoms such as headache, memory loss, impaired balance, and incoordination. There have been reports of people experiencing memory loss, skin and nerve problems after drinking excessive amounts, in parentheses, more than 2 liters a day, of soda that contain BVO. While few people are likely to drink such large quantities, concern exists because bromide appears to build up in the body. So you drink it and it stays in you. And it causes all these issues with your skin, your nervous system. Headaches, memory loss, loss of balance, incoordination. Okay, this is one you're probably more familiar with because you go to a grocery store and there's always some meat that has like some label on it saying that there's no, that they're, what do you call it? Free range. That's what they call it. Yeah, free range, or there's no that they eat grass fed, things of that nature. So you kind of get a hint that like, hey, what are the other ones eating then? So anyway, farm animal drugs. One of them is called ractopamine, RACTOPAMINE. It's administered to animals in order to kind of fatten them up. Really what it is to make them build muscle, sort of like steroids for cattle and turkeys and pigs, so that they become muscular, which is the meat we want, and lean, less fat. And they can eat there quickly as far as the muscle mass they build up, so they can be slaughtered more quickly, thereby raising, fattening up the bottom line on the balance sheet of these large companies. Again, banned in Europe. So if we want to send meat over to Europe, they would actually test for this and would refuse it if they found traces of it in there. Anyway, yeah. So this ban from 160 countries have banned this, including all across Europe, Russia, China, and the Republic of China. In parentheses, that says Taiwan here. They will all turn meat away if they find traces of this in it. Oh, yeah. So, I guess the next question is, what does ractopamine do to you? Does it cause cancer? Well, maybe. But what we do know is that it causes a kind of a stimulatory effect on the body, because it's like a beta agonist, so it can cause tachycardia, headache, tremors, irritability, and High blood pressure. I wonder if a lot of people in America have high blood pressure. I think we have quite a few people with high blood pressure. Not that it's all due to that. I mean, of course not. I'm not saying that. But it doesn't help. The processed food industry. Okay, and sticking to the theme on what the animals are eating, and then we're subsequently ingesting ourselves, is chicken with arsenic. So chicken feed in America is allowed to have some arsenic in it because that cuts down on parasites and allows chickens to get fatter quicker and quicker to slaughter. See the theme? Make the meat fatter, quicker, faster slaughter, more profits. Anyway, that arsenic is passed down to us at acceptable levels, if there is such a thing when it comes to arsenic. But it can be found in humans at trace levels. And arsenic, we know, associated with lung, bladder, skin cancers, amongst other things. So, banned many other places, of course, in the European Union.
Poisoning with arsenic goes back a long time. The Borgias, of course, used it to poison people. And then there was Giuliana Tofana, an Italian lady who specialized in creating wealthy widows by poisoning their husbands.
Lastly, just for the last example, not that this is a comprehensive list, but milk with bovine growth hormones. And you'll see labels on milk that says no growth hormone. Again, kind of a clue. Like, they have growth hormone in milk? Anyway, it's been linked to like infertility and cancers. Banned in Australia, New Zealand, Japan, and the European Union. But it's allowed here in the United States. Yep. Give them growth hormone. Again, this is not meant to be a comprehensive list of food additives and kind of the egregious things that are allowed in our foods here in the United States. Just something to get you thinking about. Okay. When it comes to prevention, healthy lifestyle, preventing disease, which again, and this will probably always be true, prevention is the best medicine. Just looking at what we're taking in, the medicine that we're giving ourselves each and every day when we eat, we nourish ourselves. So as this becomes more and more widespread as far as the knowledge, the availability of fresher foods and foods that don't have additives, we have to make some choices as individuals about what we're going to ingest, what we're going to allow in our bodies. And I know we as Americans, we live on this creed of individualism and people making their own choices. But just like tobacco, the accessibility of this information, the accessibility of fresher foods is becoming more and more widely available. More people know. And if I was in the processed food industry, I'd be thinking about pivoting. Thinking about, hey, I want to get a call to Washington. But hey, just something to think about. We'll see what happens. But I see a lot of parallels here between what happened with tobacco. We'll just have to see. Don't forget to subscribe to be notified when we drop new Dr. Keith episodes. And please post any questions you have about this episode or any other medical questions in the comments.